Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar co-hosted by Advocates for Children in New Jersey and the National Institute of Early Education Research. I am Cynthia Rice, Senior Policy Analyst at Advocates for Children. I'm here with Beth Gardiner from the National Institute of Early Education Research, Kate Hodges, also from NIEER, and Anisha Gailey, who is coming on.
Good morning.
Who will be participating towards the end in any questions that you have. We're so happy that we are part of this conversation to bring information to you in this webinar entitled Child Care Providers Advocate to be Part of State-Funded Preschool in Your Community. There's so much going on, so much information, and we're at a real point where things are going to be happening very quickly in the next few weeks, and we're happy to be here with you to talk about a few of those things. I want to get up front. One of the things that we hear from childcare providers day in and day out is the tension between preschool expansion and your own programs, and the future of your programs and potentially your businesses. We recognize that. We know it's an issue. And as advocates, we're doing everything we can at the state level to ensure that as we expand preschool, that important component of mixed delivery is included. But right now, and so we understand that, but we're not going to be addressing that today because that still needs work. But what we do know are that there are things that are going to be happening in the next few weeks, and we want to make sure that you give yourselves, you have enough information and you give yourselves the opportunity to take the best shot of being part of any preschool expansion that occurs in your communities. So let's start. Can we bring up the PowerPoint? Couple of things that I want to talk a little bit right now, some housekeeping issues. First, we're going to ask you to put any and all questions in the Q&A, not in the chat. And we will try to address all general questions. If you have specific questions, to your situation, we're going to urge you to get our emails at the end, and we will share the PowerPoint. We're going to share all this information with you. Get our emails and to email us separately. So we're only looking towards general questions. And I see my colleague Kate Hodges has already put our emails in the chat, but we want your questions to go into the Q&A, and we're going to try our best to answer as many of the general questions as possible. The other thing is this is on Facebook Live, so we hope that we'll get more people that are watching it. So let's start. We're preparing for preschool. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So why are we here? Here's our agenda. First, here's our welcome. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of preschool, a very, very short amount so how did preschool, state-funded preschool, come to New Jersey? A little update as to where we are right now. Why is this a program that benefits you being part of it? We're going to talk a little bit about that, and then the pre-K requirements. So if you are going to collaborate with your school district, what does that mean? What are the things that you're going to be responsible for providing? We're going to talk about districts and providers. We want to clear up, there's an awful lot of misconceptions as to this program, and we want to make sure that when you walk away from here today, you're better informed, and some of those misgivings or misconceptions that you've heard about are addressed. We're also going to talk about, I mentioned almost from the top that we are talking about a very, very quick timeline once the state budget is signed, and we're going to talk about all that. And what can you do to make sure that you give yourself the best chance to be a partner in expanding preschool? And then outreaching to districts. So that's our agenda for the next hour. It's jam-packed. And we want to make sure that we have time for some of your general questions. Catherine, can we go on to the next slide, please? So here's our bit of a history. State-funded preschool, in the way it looks right now, has actually been implemented in some communities for almost 25 years. And it will start its 24th year, actually 24 years. And that happened from a court case. Many of you have heard of it, Abbott versus Burke. And the two key decisions were 1998 and 2000, which mandated that preschool implementation be implemented in 31 districts. And that the districts had to meet a high quality standard. And right from the beginning, this idea of mixed delivery, which means public preschool, childcare, and Head Start, was supported by the Supreme Court as a way in which to maximize the number of 3- and 4-year-olds that can benefit from high quality preschool. So in 2008, the program was being implemented. Children were doing better in school thanks to this strong early childhood foundation. And so in 2008, then Governor Corzine decided to expand it, and it was put into our new school funding, or not so new now, school funding formula in 2008. The problem was 2008, besides a new school funding formula, also meant that we had a pretty big recession. There wasn't any money put into the budget, in any budget, until 2018. But in the last 7 budgets, the last budget of Governor Christie and all of the budgets during the Murphy administration has had funding for preschool. And I have to say that it seems like we've done a good job in selling the idea that preschool is good for kids. It's a very, very positive environment for those who are our policymakers, and that means our legislature and the governor as well. So let's go on to the next slide, please. And so what do we know? So we've been in the preschool implementing business for a long time. What do we know? Well, a study showed that there are indeed lasting effects on achievement in language arts and literacy and math and science for those children who had the opportunity to participate in our state-funded preschool program. We also know, and this is based on what findings from students who went to, that had participated in preschool and then have been in 10th grade. Excuse me. Oh, I'm talking too fast, I think. 2 years is better than 1. As you know, our state-funded preschool offers the program for 3- and 4-year-olds. And so those achievements are much more significant, twice as large, in fact, when a child has benefited from 2 years rather than just 1 year. We've also seen those when looking at the preschool students up to 10th grade, that grade retention was reduced by 15%, and special education, the number of children who required special education services was reduced by 7%. So you see that this program, because of its high quality and its comprehensiveness, has been money well spent for many of the children who have benefited from it. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. So where are we now? Well, in fact, in these last 7 years, there have been more than 200 school districts that are now offering state-funded preschool. This funding comes from the New Jersey Department of Education. Many of you who we did look at the list, are childcare providers. And so you are, most of the time you're looking at information coming from the Department of Children and Families, your licensing, as well as if you accept childcare subsidy, Department of Human Services. But this program, the funding stream comes from the Department of Education. And in our proposed budget, we are in the middle of, if you look at the newspaper or anything around our state, you can see that we're in the middle of budget negotiations for our state budget for fiscal year 2024, which begins on July 1st. In the governor's proposed budget, he's included $40 million to expand preschool in new districts beginning in this next for the school year starting in September. And what happens is it's the school district that when determined is eligible, and we'll talk a little bit about district eligibility in a few minutes, they have to apply to the New Jersey Department of Education for the funding. And as I said, this program can be implemented through a mixed delivery system, but it is not required. So a district can have all its classrooms in the public schools should they have the ability to do that, or they can work with the community. It is their choice. Although it is urged by the Department of Education, it's not required. And districts can work with the providers who participate through it's a contract. So let's say they want to maximize the number of children who can benefit. They work with childcare and Head Start, and it is a contractual relationship between the district and the childcare or Head Start program. I also want to mention that funding, if a district gets the funding, a lot of people we have heard are concerned, well, what happens the next year? Two things I want to point out is that this becomes it becomes part of state aid, just like a school district's K through 12 money. So it's pre-K through 12 state aid. And this is not a grant. It becomes part of the state aid. So, you know, we hear even districts saying, well, this grant, it's not a grant. It becomes a part of a district state aid package. So that's very, very important if you're talking to school districts to recognize that the money will continue just like the K-12 dollars continue. Next slide. So why should you participate in this program? It seems like an awful lot. First of all, money. You know, you would have access to funding, and that would allow you to improve the quality of your program. What districts are required to do is to provide to any collaborating agency, childcare, Head Start, funding that is comparable for the district salary. So that the employees, your employees who meet the criteria, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, assuming that they meet the criteria that is the same as a public school teacher, would be provided with a comparable salary and benefits. The districts often provide the materials and supplies. There's also an opportunity to increase the professional development of your entire staff thanks to these funds. That includes things like coaching. So there will be the district will provide coaching for your staff, as well as training in the curriculum and the assessment training that comes with the curriculum that the district has chosen. It also provides increased access to district services for the children with whom you're caring for and educating. That's key. And it also provides an opportunity for parents to not have to pay whatever the fee is for childcare. So there's just a few of the things how you can benefit. I mean, the reality is a couple of things. One is that most parents cannot afford the quality of the program that New Jersey state-funded preschool provides. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, that while the funding that would come from the state to the district to a program is more than, you know, you're getting from tuition, and you're getting from let's say a child whose family is eligible for a child care subsidy. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to pass the baton on to my colleague, Beth Gardiner, to talk about what are some of the requirements. Beth?
Thank you, Cynthia. I want to start by saying how thrilled we are and have so many of you joining us today. This is very exciting and obviously timely for us to be doing this. I'm going to start by talking about the requirements for both districts and providers that are related to the state-funded preschool program. Districts and providers are all required to follow the same state standards. In the case of providers and Head Starts, these requirements are in addition to your licensing or Head Start performance standards. And as Cynthia already mentioned, we will say that these are the current standards. We understand that some of the requirements become a hardship for some providers, but at this point, there are no changes to the requirements. So we want to move forward with the assumption that that's how we'll be in the foreseeable future. So the first one is that classroom space requirements are defined as 950 square feet of space, or broken down, it includes 750 square feet of instructional space and 150 square feet for storage and larger furniture that's immovable, and 50 square feet of bathroom space. Districts can apply for waivers for classrooms under 950 square feet of space, as long as there is a minimum of 700 square feet of instructional space. Classrooms are also required to have bathrooms in the classroom. And again, if the bathroom is in the hallway nearby and within sight of the classroom, districts can request waivers for bathrooms as well. And the way that's done is that the school districts are the ones that have to apply for waivers. They do that after they're funded. They do that through their county Department of Education office. And they do that on behalf of, if they have their own classrooms that are undersized or without bathrooms, they do it on their own behalf. And they also have to do it on behalf of any providers that they contract with that have less than 750 square feet of instructional space, or classrooms that do not have bathrooms in them. So all programs are required to have P3 certified teachers and trained assistants that are paid on par with K-12, as Cynthia mentioned before. The funding that you receive from the district is intended to pay for a comparable salary so that teachers are on par with the district. All programs are required to be full day, 6-hour school day, and have a maximum class size of 15. So if your licensing permits you to take more than 15 children in the class, for any contracted classrooms, anything that you're contracting with a district, the maximum class size remains 15. Providers are required to adopt the same curriculum as the district that they're working with, one of 4 that are approved by the Department of Education, and they're also required to use the same child assessment system as the district. Providers can also serve children with special needs in their general education classrooms with support for potential learning difficulties provided by the district. Districts are required to provide or make accessible professional development for all teaching staff, including in private provider sites. Next slide, please. So as Cynthia said, districts are encouraged by the department but not required to contract with private providers, but we know there are many, many successful collaborations throughout the state, really good examples in communities everywhere. But it does take time to develop relationships. And here are some of the things we know. We're hearing that many districts are just unaware of what childcare programs exist in their community. Districts tend to be more open to collaboration when providers approach them and offer to even help with the application process when the application is released. Districts also don't always know how to connect with providers or how to collaborate. We're hearing from both districts and providers alike that they need more clear guidance on collaborations and sort of clarification about who plays what role in this partnership. And many districts, I guess I will say some of the smaller districts that are coming into preschool expansion have very small universe. It's not, they're not as large as some of the districts that have been contracting for so many years, in which case they may be serving all eligible students, but many districts just simply do not have the space to serve all eligible children. And so they are strongly encouraged to collaborate with providers in the community. Next slide, please. So clearing up misconceptions. Here are some things that have come up over the years as misconceptions that people have had about the program. So these are written in the affirmative. Provider teachers do not become employees of the district. So with very few exceptions, provider teachers are hired and supervised by the site director of the program. And center is required to use the same curriculum as districts. And I would say, again, that's just with very, very few exceptions. That's the way it works. We have occasionally heard that districts have permitted providers to retain a curriculum that's different from theirs if they've been using it and trained over many years, but it's very difficult for districts to provide coaching supports to classrooms when there's more than one curriculum being implemented across the district. At this point, centers have been able to contract for as few as one classroom, and that has been true in recent years. But you cannot contract for a partial classroom. So you would have to, you can't contract for a few district children. You need to have a critical number of district children that you're serving to have at least one class of 15. And as we mentioned already, children with disabilities can be served in provider classes, and the district provides supports. And programs, providers and HSR programs can collaborate with districts in neighboring communities. So It is possible that if there's a district just over the town line or the city line from where you're operating, as long as you're serving age-eligible district children, you can seek a contract with the district. It's also possible that providers can contract with more than one district, but children from different districts cannot be in the same classroom. So that doesn't come without its complications because you may have different salary scales with different districts, but there are cases of providers that successfully collaborate with more than one district at a time. And the other thing is that programs can contract for district children already being served. So it's not necessary to have empty classrooms sitting available. If you have already, especially if you're already serving a critical number of children from a particular district, or you know that there are children out there and you can recruit them to your program, then you can serve children, contract for a classroom in where you're already serving children from the district. Next slide, please. So as Cynthia mentioned, in February, Governor Murphy gave his annual budget address for fiscal year 2024, including $40 million for funding for preschool expansion. And I will say that you see the title of this slide says estimated. The Department of Education has not yet released an application for the coming school year. So anything we talk about here today are estimated timeframes based on what we know from previous years. NIEER has been working for the past 6 years or so in collaboration with ACNJ on helping get the word out about preschool expansion, helping districts and providers be ready when the funding comes. We also work very closely with the Department of Education, although we certainly don't speak on behalf of the department. We do keep a line of communication open and keep abreast of things as they happen in real time. So as the dates for 23-24 have not yet been announced, but the typical timeline is as follows. As Cynthia mentioned, the budget process and negotiations will continue until the budget's approved. That happens on or around June 30th, with some rare exceptions in recent history. It's after June 30th, but it should be approved by June 30th. After that is approved, the Department of Education Division of Early Childhood Services announces what they call a notice of funding opportunity. That essentially serves as the district application. As Cynthia mentioned, it's the districts that have to do the application. They're the ones that are responsible for planning out the program. Ideally, they do it with your help if you're collaborating with them. And they plan out, write the application, and submit to the department. So shortly after the application is released to the districts, the department will hold mandatory meetings for interested districts. If a district is interested in applying and does not attend a mandatory meeting, they are not eligible to apply unless they attend. Typically, the department, we have an expectation that they will hold 2 sessions. If you're contracting with a district, it may be possible for you to attend the mandatory meeting, but it's primarily for districts since they are the ones responsible for the application. District applications they give the districts about a month to complete an application. This is why we urge districts and providers alike. We meet with them year round to help them be ready, because a month is a really quick turnaround time. So throughout the month of July, districts work on applications. They are typically required to be submitted on or about August 1st, depending on how the timing of the release of the application. May be a little later than August 1st. I believe last year it was about August 9th applications were due. Once applications are submitted by the district to the Department of Education, the Division of Early Childhood takes about a month to review applications. They go through every application. A team of reviewers scores them based on the quality of the application and the quality of the plan. And then funding awards are announced on or around September 1st. This is always very tricky timing. It usually comes, in the case of this year, September 1st is the Friday of Labor Day weekend. It's at that time typically that the districts are notified whether or not they receive funding. And then again, they have about a month to get newly funded classrooms up and running, and they are required to be open on or about October 1st. So anyway, I know I'm talking a lot and talking fast. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what you can do, and then we'll talk more specifically about outreach to districts. So next slide, please. So what can you do? For starters, you can determine, you may already know, whether your district is on the list of potentially eligible districts. As I said, we do not have an application yet. The department has not yet released a list of potentially eligible districts for the coming year. When we get to our next slide, I'm going to show you which districts were eligible last year, but we don't know yet for sure which districts will be eligible for the coming year. Typically, once districts are on the eligible list, they don't typically fall off, and there may in fact be additional districts added, but we just don't know that yet. It's important for you to assess your program and your expenses. What you want to do is figure out what it costs to operate your program, because what happens is if a district reaches out to you and you decide to discuss a collaborative agreement with them, the district, of course, as we said, is the one that gets funded. They're the ones that contract and with providers, and they're paid at a per pupil rate. So districts get a particular amount of money from the department to work with providers or to have in-district classrooms. And that per pupil rate is negotiated between the two parties. So it's really important for you to understand what your costs are, so that when you sit down to negotiate a potential contract with the district, you know how much you need to operate that classroom. Consider options for additional space. And I would say this is something that requires time to plan ahead. If it doesn't work, if you are looking for additional space, it probably won't happen this year, but maybe next year. And all of this requires time. So I'm going to urge you to, I wanted to note that you should not make any moves to acquire or renovate any space unless you have a commitment from the school district. At least don't do it on behalf of a contract that you don't have it already lined up or in hand. So be sure that anything you do is sorted out with the district before you decide to take on additional space with the hopes of leasing, of operating a district classroom. Cynthia, I don't know, do you want to hop on for a minute and talk about, we do know that there's been some childcare facilities improvement grants available. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, it's called the New Jersey Childcare Facilities Improvement Program. It's through the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. The grant applications, and thank you, Kate. Kate just put the link in the chat. Many of you have heard of it. It is it opened, grant applications opened in November of last year. I checked this morning and it said we have not run out of money. So that means there is still available funding through this particular program, and they're in phase 1, and the NJEDA is in phase 1. And it's a grant to provide center-based providers, not family childcare right now, at least, for facilities improvement. So it's not expanding, you want to add on more classrooms. No, it's for facilities improvement that will contribute to a higher quality early childhood environment. And it's available for nonprofits, for-profits, religious affiliation programs, and the grants run between $50,000 and $200,000. That's to look at your interior or your exterior facility to improve its quality. And this should cover the full, it's intended to cover the full cost of your project. There's another one I want to mention, that there is still some money, although the lag time is about, because of high volume of applications, is 8 months, but it's called the Small Business Improvement Grant. And this offers a reimbursement. So this is a little different than the grant, the Child Care Facility Improvement Grant. Your work would have had to have been done. Offers a reimbursement to small businesses for costs that are associated with making building improvements or purchasing new furniture or fixtures or equipment. The grant is aimed at reimbursing small businesses for about 50% of the total projected costs, and that can be up to $50,000. So yeah, there's a couple of options. separate from the preschool expansion to improve your facilities. And so we just wanted to make sure that you knew at least about these two specific opportunities. And you, by going to the New Jersey Economic Development website, which right now is njeda.com, you can get some more information about this.
Thanks so much. I'm about to pass it back to you, but a couple of other things. So that you can do is to learn more about your district's program. So whether your district is currently operating preschool program and building out further, you can learn more about what's happening at the district if you don't know already, and then reach out to the district. And actually, I'm going to pop it right back to Cynthia, who's going to talk to you more about, oh, I know, next slide, actually, because we're not there yet. I forgot I have one more slide. Thank you. So as I mentioned, this is last year's list. So this gives you an idea of who was eligible last year. We anticipate that most, if not all, of the districts that were eligible last year will be eligible again. But as we said, we don't speak on behalf of the Department of Education. This is last year's list. It is not the one, it's not accurate for the coming year. There may be additional districts added, so we don't know yet if they're going to open up the application further and include more districts. So stay tuned for that. The district list will come out at about this at the same time the application comes out. And I will make a note that unless the district has full day kindergarten, they will not be funded for preschool. The requirement by the department is that any districts currently operating a half day kindergarten program will be required to move all the kindergartners to full day before they can accept funding for preschool programs. So stay tuned for more. I'm going to pass it over to Cynthia, who can talk to you more about outreach to districts.
Sure. Catherine, can you move on to the next slide, please? So what do you do right now? And hopefully some of you have actually taken some steps already. But you want to become, I want to talk about this in the context of formal conversation and informal conversation. First, you need to get in touch with the superintendent. At the end of the day, it is the district's decision, the ultimate decision as to whether or not they want to collaborate with community programs, childcare and Head Start. So it's their decision. So what you have to do in one form or another is to articulate to the superintendent that you are ready, are willing and able to work with the district on maximizing the number of children who can benefit from this program. So I would say you could send a letter or phone to schedule an appointment. But here's what you want to do is that you want them to make sure that they know that you have a lot to offer, and don't underestimate what all of you have to offer a program. The school districts have not, many of them have not been in the business of very young children. And so, but you have. And so talking about some of your qualities, it showed that you did your homework and you're ready to partner. So for example, the first thing you'd want to put in is that you have the facility. You have classrooms that meet the facility criteria. That's a game changer. If you have a great program, but your classrooms are only at 550 square feet, you cannot get a waiver for that. So you want to make sure that you've told them right off the bat, I have classrooms that meet the DOE standard. You also want to talk about whether or not you have teachers who have a P3 through 3rd grade certificate. If a teacher has a K, one of the varied K6, K5, K3, I'm sorry, K5 or K6 that have been in the exist now or in the past, that's not what is going to be accepted. You have to have a pre-K3 certificate because you have to be certified to teach very young children, and that's 3 and 4-year-olds. So if you have teachers like that, terrific. Or if you're willing to hire teachers that meet that standard of a P3 certificate, that's great. You want to put that in the letter. If you are already in Grow and J Kids or rated, or you have some kind of national accreditation, like the National Association of the Education of Young Children, NAEYC accreditation, you put that in the letter. I would also put in, is how long you've been in the community. If you've been in the community for 20 years, you're a part of that community in a very different way. So you want to add that in. So you've done your homework. And if you send an email or a letter or a call and you don't hear back, you keep trying. You want to make sure that you have had, you're able to talk to them eventually. So that's the very first step you have to do. The second thing is, how do you informally contact people? Well, who do you know? Do you know any school board members? Do you know the superintendent? Do you know teachers or other administrators in the community? Talk to them. I mean, to me, if you live in the community, or obviously your business is in the community, if you're talking to school board members, that's key, because you want to bring that up. I was formerly on a school board, and I would, go for milk and be gone an hour and a half, because informal conversations took place all the time in the community. I'd be in, the dairy aisle for an hour talking to either parents or people who are concerned about a particular issue. So those informal conversations are critically important in, turning the tide on how the district feels about actually taking this. And I don't want to say that it's insignificant, this big step in bringing preschool, state-funded preschool to the community. And here's another way. As a district moves forward, more and more districts, they're required, if they're receiving state aid for state-funded preschool, but they have to have an early childhood advisory council. And so you want to request that you're a member of that, because you're coming to that table with expertise. It's beneficial for you to join, or to ask if they're going to start one. Even if a district doesn't apply for the funding, or if a district isn't eligible, this is a good thing to start in developing a relationship with the district. There may be, I looked at the list, there may be some people whose districts aren't on that list. Don't say, well, that's it. Begin to develop a relationship with the district so that you can be their go-to person for early childhood. And eventually, other districts will come on and become eligible. So you want to make sure that you're positioned to be that person, or that business that the district can say, okay, we can reach out to them. And for no other reason, boy, your kids are coming to them. So talking about transition practices is key. So there's just a couple of ideas, but make sure, I want to say, make sure you've done your homework beforehand, and do it quickly, because what's going to happen is, Beth talked about, that the budget gets signed, the list comes out by the Department of Education, and things start happening. And you want to say to the district, either you were on the list, if you want to send a letter, in the next few days, I noticed that our district was on the list last year. It's likely it'll be on again. I'd like to be part of any collaboration to bring preschool to our community. And if you write a letter after the list comes out and say, I see that we're on the list, we'd like to participate if you're going to apply. So think about how you can leverage your own expertise to be part of this. Okay. Next. So we have contacts and questions. We do have Anisha on, and maybe we can just give her a minute. Anisha, would you just describe where you're from and your relationship with the Rahway Public School?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Anisha Galley. I am the Executive Director at Rahway Community Action Organization, Helping Hands Learning Academy. We are a multi-service nonprofit servicing Rahway community for over 50 years. And we have been in the childcare business for over 20 years. And so shortly after my appointment as executive director, an RFP came through from our district, from Rahway Public School District, the superintendent's office, directed to early childhood centers in Rahway to see if we would be interested in partnering. I answered the RFP and was the first and only community partner for the first year of the collaboration for our preschool expansion here in Rahway. We started with one classroom, as Cynthia and her colleagues spoke to about spacing and size. Our classrooms fell slightly short of the required amount, and so it was termed grandfathered in. So our classrooms were able to come into the collaborative. We started with one classroom. We've since expanded that relationship and now have 3 preschool classrooms. Overall, for me, the commitment to provide high quality childcare services to the children and families of Rahway was embedded in our core here, in our core value. It was always something that I had strived for and worked towards establishing and cultivating a relationship with the district. So prior to having that partnership, just as Cynthia spoke to, just reaching out to the district and saying, hey, we service children here in Rahway, is there any way that we could meet and possibly do some professional development? What is it that you need or that you have expectations of these students to know? Because essentially they're going to filter into your school systems. And so for us, it's just expanding on and building that relationship. We were part of the preschool association that you spoke to, Cynthia. I'm sorry. It's
Early
the
Learning
board.
Council.
Yes, the Early Learning Council. And so it was a great starting place for us early on in the partnership. It was just not, like I spoke to earlier, I stated that I was the first and only partner, but there were other centers that were interested, that are also, it was, stakeholders in the community that were interested, that could speak to early child, that they would come out and we would share information and ideas. And so I am honored to say that, we have 3 classrooms. This is our 4th year, I believe, with the expansion, and we just received our contract for that. Our updated contract for the upcoming school year. You also spoke to the NJEDA. I just received my funding award letter for that I received $230,000 worth of funding for NJEDA. So just like you said, everything you said was everything that attracted me to the preschool expansion to join. I understood what it meant for the quality of care I was able to provide. Though I was a Grow NJ participating center prior to joining the collaborative, and I've since been rated. I'm a 3-star Grow rated center. Understanding that this enabled me to hire P3 certified teachers. So taking that quality to the next level, providing access to quality education to the community. It's been a staple for our agency. Enrollment, we really don't struggle in terms of enrollment. Honestly, I hadn't had those problems until the pandemic, but coming on board with it's helped stabilize my enrollment. I don't have to go out as much to fill my classrooms, because I understand that a large portion of, I have 6 classrooms and 3 of them are district funded classrooms. And so the equipment, the material, the support that we get from the district in terms of professional development and things of that nature.
Great, Anisha, thank you. We're gonna get to questions because we may need you on some of them. So we're gonna, Beth
Okay.
and Kate and I'll Kate Hodges is here, and we're going to try to field the questions. Kate?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for all of your wonderful questions. We're going to get to as many as we can, but if we don't get to your question, please do reach out to us after the presentation. The first one that we're getting a lot is a lot of clarification about the list that you shared, Beth, the districts are eligible versus districts might already receive funding, and who the providers could be looking towards.
Thanks, Kate. Yes, I neglected to clarify that that list is the districts that are not yet funded, but eligible to apply. So there are additionally, none of the Abbotts are going to be on that list. None of the, what we call the former ECBA and ELI districts that are funded for Part D programs are also not on the list. Any district that's not yet serving their full universe of preschoolers, if they're not already serving all the 3- and 4-year-olds in the district, you should feel is somebody you can reach out to. So if it's an Abbott district that's not currently meeting, or an ECBA or ELI district that is not currently meeting their full universe, or maybe the ECBA and ELI, I would say the ECBA ELI programs, even though they're not on that list, they still do need to apply to expand because some of them may still be in a half-day program. So they have to do an application in order to be converted over to full day, but you should feel comfortable to reach out to either funded or eligible districts. Again, once we know which are the eligible districts for the coming year.
And, I just want to add that ECBA, ELI, they're all these state jargon things for different levels of state education funding through the Department of Education. If you're not sure about your district, where it falls in, just email one of us and we'll be happy to fill you in as to where your specific district falls, if it's not on the list, or if it's not on the list. Okay.
And I also threw in the chat while this conversation came up, the list of funded districts, and those districts with an asterisk next to them to note whether they're an ECBA or ELI district as well. So that's another helpful resource. I'm sorry to cut you off, Beth.
No, I was just going to say the same. Thank you.
Perfect. We also got a number of questions about who would be eligible for this program, whether private Christian schools would be eligible, and whether or not there would be restrictions on religious education.
Yeah, I'll start off with that. Yes, religious programs can be contracted to provide preschool services for the state, although they cannot during the 6-hour part of the school day. They can't have religious content. So the religious content can be certainly in your other classrooms or in your before and after programs. But for the 6-hour school day, any religious programs can have a contract, but they have to stay away from religious content during those 6 hours.
And similar to that, if a preschool program is existing and already has a curriculum that they're using, should they be will they be required to move to the district curriculum?
Yes, with few exceptions, they will be required to switch over because it's too difficult for the district to oversee professional development and coaching for more than one curriculum. So what we didn't say is that if you're not familiar with the program, districts hire coaches, and the coaches work with in-district classrooms and provider classrooms to implement the curriculum, to oversee, to help coach teachers on all the quality elements of the program, to do classroom observations and provide guidance, and to oversee the curriculum implementation. So it is very, very rare for a district to agree otherwise. Typically, a provider does have to switch over to the chosen curriculum and child assessment, same child assessment system.
Thank you for that. And we've got a number of questions about situations in which districts are not interested in collaborating, or a district doesn't yet have a state-funded program or is not yet eligible. Can providers go outside of district lines?
So the answer is, if the short answer is that it is only a school district that can apply for the funding. So a provider cannot take on that application process. They can look to communities that are close by and see if they're interested. So for example, if your program is, let's say, in one community but borders another one and the other community is interested, you can work with them. But those children who will be in your classrooms are from that other community. That can happen. But again, I don't know if you remember, but at the very beginning, I said, this is really up to the district to decide what their particular program is going to look like. And that may mean it can look like what Anisha described that Rawway is implementing, which is through a mixed, a model for mixed delivery and having classrooms in the community as well as in the public schools. But there are other programs that are keeping everything in-house. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're providing access to preschool to every child in that district, every 3- and 4-year-old. That's the key to find out. But that is, again, it is the ultimate determination. I was at a meeting recently where they said, is the superintendent God? Well, no, not God, but they're pretty much the decision makers in this. So it's their call. And it may seem unfair, but that, as I said right from the very beginning, that's the issue we're trying to address in pushing for a stronger mixed delivery system. But in the meantime, this is what we've got, and we're trying to make sure that you know and understand where you can fit in and how best to present your program to the district.
I wanted to follow up to say too, it's also at the discretion of the district if they do want to collaborate, which provider they collaborate with. So it's hard to know in any particular case if your program was overlooked and the district contracted with someone else, that it may be related to the program implementation. It may be related to transportation. It's hard to know why, but it is ultimately at the discretion. I would say, having heard Anisha talk, it reminded me to think about, for providers to be thinking about things like your status in Grow NJ Kids, which is New Jersey's quality rating and improvement system. You need to sell yourself to the district. So you need to give them 101 good reasons why they should contract with you, and anything you can do to make their job easier by preparing yourself and your program for all the high quality elements ahead of time is really good stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Can you talk a little bit about how wraparound services would work for families that need a full day of care and how that's funded?
Do you want to take that, Cynthia, or you want me to?
Yeah, no, sure. I can start it and you fill in. So wraparound is not part of this. So wraparound, as Beth talked about, the education component of state-funded preschool comes from the Department of Education and is a 6-hour day. What happens before and what happens afterwards is going to come from a different funding stream. So you may have you may have private pay where parents are actually paying, or children whose families are eligible for a child care subsidy. That may happen. I think that's the beauty of collaborating with childcare, and that should be included in anything that you provide information to the district, is because your programs aren't open 9 to 3. You're meeting the needs of working families, and so that you're minimizing the transitions of children. Let's say you have a child who's eligible for, who is a 3-year-old in a community, and the mom or mom and dad or whoever is the adult in the family is working and may need care before 9 and after 3, is that you can provide that without moving the child from one place to the other. You provide a service that meets the needs of working families, where sometimes districts do not have those types of services available within the public schools, or limited. So, that's a real selling point, because it is meeting the needs of families. And in fact, you don't want a parent to keep a child out of our high quality program because they can't bring the child at 9 and pick up at 3 because of work. You want them to make sure that they're thinking about how do you best meet the needs of the children of working families.
Wonderful, thank you. Beth, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, thanks. I think that's it.
Perfect. We've got a lot of questions about facilities. Some of them are shorter, some of them are longer. First, does the building need to have at least 6 classrooms?
I actually saw that question, and that question was specific to Abbott, an Abbott question. I would defer to the Department of Ed. I would say reach out to the Department of Education to get a response to that question for the former Abbotts. I will say that there is a requirement, I believe, still on the books that says 6 classrooms, but in recent years, as preschool expansion has rolled out, contracted providers have not been required to have a minimum of 6 classrooms. So I just don't want to answer that question on behalf of the Department of Education. I'm going to put a, if you don't have a contact for the Department of Education, I'll put a general mailbox in the chat that you can reach out to.
And along the same lines of facilities, you know, we've touched on it a little bit, but we've gotten a lot of questions about, you know, what to do if your classrooms just don't meet the space requirement. So I think it might be worth kind of reiterating some of the pathways that providers could take to find kind of alternatives to meeting those facilities requirements.
Cynthia, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the department has been pretty solid about the waiver on where, you know, what classrooms are. And so it may be, you know, one option is that you're thinking about how do you know, can you find other space? Can you think about reconfiguring classrooms in a way that would then allow you to meet the facilities requirement? But I think that there hasn't been, except for that slight change in from 700 to 750 square feet, that little bit of wiggle room, the department has been pretty adamant about sticking to that. So it may behoove you to think about what do I have? What's my building? Do I have non-weight bearing walls that can come down? You can see that I'm not a facilities expert, but thinking about how can you move within your own footprint, can you move your classroom space to make that requirement?
Along those same lines as well, we got a question about outdoor space. Can you talk briefly about whether they need an outdoor space or maybe an indoor play space would suffice?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do my best. I would say that ultimately, I believe that may come down to be a licensing question, because I'm not sure that DOE has, I'd have to double check the administrative code, but the program is generally required to have outdoor space. But I do know that in some urban areas, the Department of Licensing has permitted indoor space in lieu of outdoor space. So I would defer that one back to licensing. And I don't have a good answer for the DOE side of things on that. Sorry.
Thanks. And within these classrooms, can the providers serve both 3 and 4-year-olds? And can those children be in the same classrooms, or are they separated into a classroom for 3s and a classroom for 4s?
Yes, they can be served. In fact, the Department of Education recommends a mixed delivery, a mixed age group classroom. So yes, it is permissible and encouraged even to put 3 and 4-year-olds in the same class.
I'm looking, we've got about 2 minutes left. We've got a number of questions that are still coming in. I want to remind everyone, if we don't get a chance to get to your question today, please send an email to one of us. I'll go ahead and put our emails back in. But I think at this point it would be, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Cindy, to wrap us up.
Great. So I think from looking at the Q&As that there's still a lot of questions, and I urge you to please reach out to us. I think we have all of our emails, and Anisha, I think it's okay that people can email you as well. Great. So we have everyone in there. We're here to help you. We want you to be successful. Our goal is to have as many kids in this program as possible. And that means in most communities, they're going to need your help. And it may not happen this year, but making sure that you are best equipped to sell yourself, to advocate for yourselves, to your programs and what you can bring to the table is most important. We're going to be around, and we have your list. We will try to keep you updated as to when exactly once the budget is passed and once the list comes out, we're going to try to get that list out once it's made public so that you can see what school districts are going to be able to apply for the money. But don't wait for that. If you can put a letter together, and in fact, I know on the ACNJ website, we have a template letter that you can send to the superintendent. So we've done a lot of the work for you that can help you craft something that meets, that is specific, that at least lays a foundation on what you can, on what you can send to your district superintendent. But please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to help you. And I want to mention just for Beth is a specialist, Kate is a specialist, and they know the ins and outs of this program better than anyone, just about. So we're very, very happy to help. I see that someone's saying, can you share the template? We can certainly share the template, and we'll send something out with that either later today or when we send the whole package of stuff out. So thank you. Beth, do you have anything you want to add? Kate, Anisha?
I do not, but I would just reiterate, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and if we will do our best to answer questions, and if we can't, we'll hopefully be able to direct you to someone who can. So we don't have all the answers, but we do have a lot of experience, and we're happy to talk to you about your individual program as it arises.
Thanks very much. Our fingers are crossed for all of you, and we wish you the best. Have a good rest of the day. Bye now.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you all.
And thank you, Anisha.
Yes.
You're welcome. Thank
It's really,
you.
really good to have you here.